Classification by Aaron Rodgers. Where on Earth do organisms live? The biosphere. Living things can be found almost everywhere. They can live deep in the oceans or high up in Earth's atmosphere. The part of Earth that supports living things is called the biosphere. Living things and their environments make up the biosphere. Examples of different environments in the biosphere are deserts, oceans, fields, beaches, backyards, and cities. Scientists have already discovered and named almost 2 million different organisms, or living things, in Earth's biosphere. However, there may still be millions of organisms that have not been discovered yet. Each year, scientists name about 10,000 new organisms. Why are there still so many living things that have not been discovered? One reason is that there are parts of Earth that are hard for scientists to study. There is still a lot to learn about Earth's deep oceans, polar areas, dense rainforests, and vast deserts. Many organisms are also very tiny and hard to find. Each organism in the biosphere interacts with other organisms and the environment. This produces a web of interactions. All parts of the web are connected. This web is constantly changing. A small change in one part of the web can cause a large change in another part of the web. Humans play an important part in this web. Variety among living things. How many living things can you name? There is an amazing variety of living things on Earth. The organisms found on Earth have many different body plans and structures. Because of these differences, organisms can live in almost every place on Earth. All living things share some common features. They are all made of cells. They all require a source of energy. They all reproduce. However, they are different in some very important ways, too. Living things have characteristics that help them survive and reproduce in their environments. These characteristics are called adaptations. For example, a cactus has many adaptations that help it to survive in a dry desert environment. The spines of the cactus are actually leaves. Their shape helps them keep water from leaving the plant. The spines also protect the cactus from being eaten. There is clearly great variety among organisms, yet some groups of organisms share many of the same characteristics. These organisms may be members of the same species. A species is a group of very similar organisms. To be in the same species, the organisms must be able to mate with one another and produce offspring that are also able to produce offspring. Even if organisms are part of the same species, they can look very different from one another. They can be different sizes, colors, and shapes. But because they are the same species, they have similar body plans and structures, such as the horses you see here. There are many different species within each group of organisms. Scientists believe that 99% of all species that have ever lived on Earth no longer exist. How do scientists group organisms? How organisms are grouped? How do scientists study so many different kinds of organisms? Have you noticed how a music store organizes the CDs it sells? You can find your favorite singer's music because the store groups the CDs by the artist names or by the type of music they perform. A CD is usually placed in a group with other CDs that are similar to it. This is how scientists group Earth's many organisms. Organisms with similar characteristics are grouped together. The grouping of things according to their similarities is called classification. Kingdom. Animals. The organisms shown here are all members of the animal kingdom. Phylum. Arthropods. The animals shown here are a part of the arthropod phylum. Class. Insects. The arthropods shown here are part of the insect class. Order. Coleoptera. The insects in this order all have the same types of wings. Family. Coccinellidae. This family includes only ladybug beetles. Genus species. Coccinella novemnatata. This ladybug beetle is very similar to others of the same species. In the past, scientists used different systems of classification. Even today, more than one system is being used. However, most scientists use a system similar to the one that a man named Carolus Linnaeus developed in the 1700s. Linnaeus divided all organisms into two large groups or kingdoms. One group was the plant kingdom, and the other group was the animal kingdom. Then he divided these kingdoms into smaller groups based on the features of the organisms. Today, most scientists use a classification system that divides all living things on Earth into 6 kingdoms instead of 2. These kingdoms are then divided into smaller and smaller groups. The 6 kingdoms. Linnaeus did not have the scientific tools that scientists use today. He did not have powerful microscopes that magnify the cells of an organism. With more advanced scientific tools, Linnaeus might have found that some organisms do not fit into either the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. For example, bacteria are single-celled organisms that do not have a nucleus. Both plant and animal cells have a nucleus. This difference was an extremely important discovery. Many scientists believe that bacteria should be grouped separately from plants and animals. Today, most scientists group organisms based on their cell structure, how they get food, and how they reproduce. Archaebacteria. Archaebacteria live in water that is extremely hot or in water that is 10 times saltier than seawater. This type of bacteria has been on Earth for billions of years. Eubacteria. Some eubacteria can cause disease. Other eubacteria help make soil fertile and are necessary for making foods such as yogurts and cheeses. Some eubacteria help the human body make vitamins. Protists. Some protists are harmful, but most are helpful. Protists formed much of the gas and oil we use today. Many protists are food for other organisms. Fungi. Fungi are used to make foods and medicines such as penicillin. Some fungi can cause human diseases such as athlete's foot and ringworm. Fungi also cause plant diseases called rusts. Plants. Plants are necessary for life on Earth. Like all plants, these trout lilies have roots, stems, and leaves. Plants trap the sun's energy to produce sugars. Animals. Animals get energy by eating other organisms. This topi lives in Africa. It has special adaptations that make it able to find and eat the type of food it needs. Many scientists today group all organisms into 6 different kingdoms. One kingdom is called Archaebacteria. This kingdom includes bacteria that live where there is no oxygen, in very salty water, or in very hot water. Most other types of organisms cannot survive in these environments. Another kingdom, called Eubacteria, is made up of all other bacteria. These bacteria are found in almost every environment. They even live in your body. There are as many bacteria in your mouth as there are people on Earth. A third kingdom is called fungi. A fungus is an organism with more than one cell that grows in moist, dark places. They grow on top of other organisms. As the fungi grow, they give off chemicals that break down these organisms. They get the nutrients they need from this process. Some different types of fungi are mushrooms, molds, and yeast. In mushrooms and molds, cells are connected by a system of strands called hyphae. Hyphae can form thick, large mats. For example, a single mushroom in Oregon has a web of underground hyphae that spreads across 2,200 acres. That is the same size as 1,665 football fields. The hyphae take in the nutrients that the fungi need to grow. Yeast cells are different than mushrooms and molds. They are not connected by hyphae. Fungi are different from plants. Although many fungi look like plants and have cells that are similar to plants, they are actually quite different. Plant cells have a substance called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll helps plants make their own food. Fungi do not have chlorophyll. Instead, fungi take in nutrients from other organisms. A fourth kingdom is called the protist kingdom. Most protists are tiny single-celled organisms. Protists are different from bacteria because their cells have a nucleus, and bacteria do not. There are more than 200,000 species of protists. Some protists are like animals. They get energy by eating other organisms. An example of this type of organism is the amoeba. Other protists are more like plants. These protists contain chlorophyll. They make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. An example of a plant-like protist is algae. Other protists are more like fungi. These protists grow in damp environments with a lot of nutrients. They absorb food through their cell membranes. How are plants and animals classified? Plant classification. There is a wide variety of plants within the plant kingdom. Plants come in many different colors, sizes, and shapes. Some plants are very large, such as the coast redwoods in California. These trees can be up to 112 meters tall. Other plants are tiny. The duckweed that covers many ponds is only 0.6 millimeters tall. No matter what their size, plants are extremely important to every living thing on Earth. Most living things depend on plants for energy. Plants also help make the climate on Earth stable. Plants can be either vascular or non-vascular. A vascular plant has cells that form tubes or vessels to carry water and nutrients throughout the plant. They can carry materials long distances, even to the top of a redwood tree. There are at least 260,000 species of vascular plants. Some vascular plants make seeds and some do not. Examples of plants that do not make seeds are horsetails and ferns. Tulips, grasses, maple trees, and tomato plants are all examples of seed-making plants. There are two types of plants that make seeds. Gymnosperms are seed plants that do not produce flowers. Some examples of gymnosperm plants are evergreens, such as pine or fir trees. Angiosperms are seed plants that produce flowers. A non-vascular plant does not carry its materials through tubes. These plants get their nutrients by slowly passing them from one cell to another. For this reason, most non-vascular plants are small. Scientists have found about 18,000 species of non-vascular plants. Animal classification. You can probably name many different animals. However, the animal kingdom is much more diverse than you might think. The animal kingdom is divided into about 35 phyla. Although animals can be very different from one another, they all share certain characteristics. All animals are multicellular organisms. All animals get their food by eating other organisms. All animals have cells that contain a nucleus. Unlike plant cells, the cells of animals do not contain a cell wall. Invertebrates are animals that do not have a backbone. They make up about 95% of all animal species on Earth. Some invertebrates are tiny, such as the microscopic mites that cover animals' bodies. Other invertebrates can be large, such as the giant squid, which can grow to 20 meters long. Vertebrates are animals with backbones. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals are all vertebrates. All vertebrates are a part of one phylum called chordates. Animal phyla. Cnidarians. Though they may look like plants, these inhabitants of the coral reef are animals. Cnidarians have a single body opening surrounded by a ring of stinging cells. Jellyfish and anemones are also in this phylum. Mollusks. Mollusks have soft bodies, and most have hard shells. Clams, squid, octopuses, snails, and slugs are all mollusks. Mollusks are invertebrates. Segmented worms. These feathers are actually the tentacles of peacock worms. The tentacles are used to catch food on the ocean floor, where these worms live. Leeches and earthworms are also in this phylum. Arthropods. This tarantula is not an insect, but it belongs to the same phylum as insects, arthropods. All arthropods have segmented bodies, jointed legs, and hard skeletons on the outside of their bodies. Spiders, crabs, millipedes, and centipedes are all arthropods. Echinoderms. This sea star lives in the ocean and has tough, spiny skin. The bodies of echinoderms have 5 parts. Brittle stars, sea lilies, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers are all echinoderms. Chordates. This gorilla is a vertebrate, one kind of animal in the chordate phylum. The gorilla is warm-blooded. Its body remains at a constant temperature no matter what the temperature is outside. Other vertebrates, such as reptiles, are cold-blooded.